Polymers are large molecules made from many smaller parts. The smaller parts that join together to make a polymer are called a monomer. And they join together in a chain-like fashion to form a larger molecule called a polymer. Poly meaning many, so a polymer is made of many parts. Now the many parts of the polymer come from our monomers, but we've also within our polymer chain will be able to identify a section that repeats over and over again, and we call that a repeating unit. So in this section, what you're going to need to be able to do is draw a polymer chain or a section of a polymer chain given a specific monomer. You're also going to need to be able to identify a repeating unit within a polymer chain. And given a polymer chain, identify what monomers would have formed that polymer. There are two types of polymers that we are going to look at. Addition polymers, which result from addition reactions between monomer units, and condensation polymers, which result from condensation reactions between polymer units. Firstly, we'll have a look at addition polymers. Addition polymers result when we have monomers which have a carbon-carbon double bond. And during the polymerization process, you can picture that carbon-carbon double bond as essentially opening up to form a single bond, and then we've got these other bonds that are able to link them together. So we can see here we've got 3 individual monomer units. What's going to happen is the double bond here is essentially going to open up. So that's going to become single bond between those two. Now each carbon has an extra bond which can be used to link to something in each direction. And we can see we end up with a chain of carbon atoms with single bonds between them. Now in this case we have got the same monomer repeating each time. However, an addition polymer can form from different monomers which contain the carbon-carbon double bond. When we have a look at the section of polymer that we've drawn, just take note that because it's a section of a polymer, we have open bonds on each end. So it's not closed off, so it would look like a smaller molecule. Also, you have to be able to identify the repeating unit. So basically, you want to have a look along the chain, pick a particular point, doesn't have to be the start, and look along until we see that same point starting to repeat again. So in this case, after we get there, we'll see it repeating again. So you identify the repeating unit with some square brackets. Now some features to take note of in addition polymers. They're generally going to be chains of carbon atoms joined by single bonds. And the monomer unit is the same as a repeating unit, but it will have a carbon-carbon double bond in place of the carbon-carbon single bond. The other type of polymers that we're going to have a look at are condensation polymers. And as stated before, they result when there is a condensation reaction between monomer units. So you recall from your previous studies that a condensation reaction is when a small molecule sort of falls out of the reaction during the process. So for example, in these cases, we get a water molecule being formed. There are 2 different types of condensation polymers that we're going to look at, and it's the linking group that varies between the 2. Polymers with an ester linking group between the monomer units are called polyesters, and condensation polymers with an amide linking group between the monomer units are called polyamides. We'll have a look at the formation of both polyesters and polyamides in a separate video. Quite often when people think of polymers, they think of plastics, and there are two terms that you need to be familiar with when dealing with polymers: thermoplastics and thermosets. Thermoplastics can be heated, in which case they melt and become pliable, and then cooled down to become hard and rigid again. During that process, they can be shaped. This makes them suitable for recycling. And this relates back to their structure because there are only dispersion forces between the polymer chains. Thermosets, by comparison, will not become pliable and melt when heated. If they're heated high enough, they'll just tend to char. Because of this, they're not suited to recycling. This property results from thermosets having highly cross-linked structures. So that means there are other types of links and bonds between polymer chains, giving them these properties. So this leads us into a wider consideration of the interactions between polymer chains. And depending on the type of polymer, this can vary from dispersion forces, hydrogen bonding, and covalent bonding. And depending on the type of interactions between the polymer chains will influence the strength, rigidity, and elasticity of that specific substance. As you complete your reading of pages 320 to 322, I'd like you to summarise the properties that result from each of these different types of interactions between chains in a table with similar structure to this.